It's 7 p.m. and I call to order this meeting of the Middlebury Development Review Board for November 26, 2018. First thing I'll do is briefly go over the business agenda. The first application is a request by Anthony Neary for a final conditional use approval of his proposal to resume retail grocery store deli cafe at 3 Elm Street. The second application tonight is Aurora Learning Center for an amended conditional use approval to add the Middlebury Area Land Trust business office to the property at 238 Peterson Terrace. Are there any communications from the public that are not on the agenda tonight? Hearing none. Next item is the approval of the DRB minutes for 11/5/2018. Is there a motion? Moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion, changes, comments, corrections? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Rick is abstaining. Okay. First application tonight is an application request by Anthony Neary for final conditional use approval of his proposal to resume the retail grocery store deli cafe used on the property formerly known as Greg's Market. The property is located at 3 Elm Street and 30 McIntyre Lane in the Village Residential Commercial District, parcel 24199 and 24201. You would like to come up and introduce yourselves?
So it looks like there's only one hot seat up here.
Okay. First thing I'll, the following is the DRB.
They come apart, Tony. Yeah, just lift it up.
The following is the DRB oath for applicants, interested persons, and those who wish to participate in this hearing. Do you affirm that the evidence and information you are giving in this proceeding is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief? Would you raise your hand? Anybody that wants to participate? Thank you. At this time, I would ask the members of the board if any member has a conflict of interest regarding this application. Also, at this time, does any member wish to disclose any ex parte conversations concerning this case? Okay, if you'd like to present your proposal to us.
Well, I don't know if you know Jonathan Ashley from Du Bois and King. He's the one in his organization did the study of exactly what the town had asked me to, 13 different criteria, I believe it's 13. And his engineering firm reaffirmed what we always thought about where the parking was and what's going on in the front of the building and where the water and sewer was. So I really would like him to answer most of the questions, and when it gets into hours, how many employees, and anything else you need to know concerning the operations, I can take it. But as far as the logistics go, I'd like Jonathan to address those.
And what would your preference be? Should I present the plans at all, or
If you would go over the site plan.
is it okay to do it over at
Sure,
the
yep.
screen?
Yep.
So there's the existing Greg's Market building is here. If you could pan up a little bit, show the whole footprint of the existing building. So this is the existing building. The hatched area of the building is the the retail space in front, and for people who are familiar with Greg's from past days, behind the hatched area is the sort of the meat and storage area. And that's, there's no proposed change to the footprint of the building. I think on the earlier site plan submission, we had shown an expansion on this side, but decided to keep the footprint the same. There is a little, a future entrance shown at the door. So like when you enter supermarkets, a space in between the outside and the inside where shopping carts could be.
Okay,
But that's
so
not,
is that gonna be the main entrance to the building?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And this door the door on this end would still be used, but this is closest to all the proposed parking. So that would be the main in and out. There, outside on the front end of the building, there was, as a lot of you know, there used to be parking in front of the building. The request was to eliminate that. The thought of using that space is to have an awning with some tables available so that if people purchase food in and want to eat it while they're here, they could sit at the tables and eat their food from inside. There is there are the same spaces along the Exchange Street side of the building. No proposed change there. And then the McIntyre Lane that goes through here, we've got the property lines shown from Tim Short's survey of the Pool World property. Here's the faint footprint of the Pool World building. The plan would ultimately be to remove that building and expand parking up into here, and we can look at that in a minute. Next to the building, with some offset for walking space, would be a few handicap accessible spaces, a few other spaces, and then still maintaining the truck loading zone that's been used before. We looked at the turning movements of delivery trucks. They can pull onto McIntyre Lane and back in and exit without a conflict other than one space. So I think that's,
While we got that there, the front part where the tables are gonna be?
Yes.
Is that elevation gonna be changed, or, because it's a slope now, will that slope remain?
I don't think there's any proposed change to the slope there, unless,
Well, we could if, because of the level of the tables is what you're talking about.
yeah.
I mean, we could, but we also have to be wheelchair accessible, so we'd have to come off on the side to go up. But we could make that change. I mean, we looked at it.
No, I was just curious as to
Yeah.
if you're proposing anything,
Yeah, it would have
or
to
whether
be.
you're gonna keep that
It would have
slope.
to come to the end and then block it and then come down around. If you came off the west side of that slope and made a turn, you would have to bring it down and then do your 1 inch per foot for wheelchair access.
Well, does that front have to be wheelchair access? Does this front have to be wheelchair access?
I would think so. I think both of them do, the one on the side and in the front. I don't think they, dealing with the A&W down back, they told me I needed 2 wheelchair entrances.
Okay.
So I think if we could pan up now, we can look at the proposed expanded parking. So vehicles that are entering off of the main road would come in past where we were just looking. We've got angled spaces on both sides, and a 16-foot clear backing space in between. And then an exit from that area here. There's an island around this existing catch basin. And you can see a number of utilities intersecting that area. There's space on the northeast corner of the proposed parking area for pushing snow and keeping it on the property. These are the edges of the property line that are from the Tim Short survey of the Pool World property. And then there's space for snow along the northeast edge of the parking area as well. We did have discussions with Jennifer about potential for trees. This is an area that some could be added. We've looked at a sketch.
John, is that parking lot a paved parking lot?
Is it
Not
what?
at this point.
No, well,
Oh, is it paved? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear.
yeah. Is that, so it's not a proposal?
Oh, yeah, eventually it
I
will.
know it's not paved now. My question is, will it be paved?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Paved in
these
line.
will be striped spaces. And we haven't talked about the surface treatment of between the parking spaces and the edge of McIntyre Lane, but it could be marked off with paint or changed.
Or a wall. No. See, the hope is, I haven't got RK Miles to agree yet, but is to leave that parking lot and then take a right and go right out onto Exchange Street in their little road. Now, I don't know if the town has a right of way through there or not. I'm sure we could research it, but RK's a good guide. I think we can make a deal. If he needs help parking his vehicles for his employees, maybe we can make a deal for him to go, you come out of the parking lot, take a left, go to Exchange Street. If you can, then you can get right out of there without any problem, and it would eliminate a lot of problems as far as traffic on the other end.
But it would reduce the number of parking spaces for your customers.
No, it would, did you say reduce it?
Yes.
No, not at all.
I thought you mentioned a parking deal with RK Miles.
Well, but that, 8-10 vehicles, this is a 50-car parking lot, 40-some-odd car parking lot. And way back there, it's very unlikely that, unless you really want to shop Greg's like a dedicated shopper, not like Shaw's where you park on the east end of Europe and then drive and walk to the store and then walk through the store, or like the Co-op. The Co-op has got a huge parking lot. And I think we're going to be more of a grab and go than a dedicated shopper. That like Greg's used to be. Greg had a few people that would shop everything they ever bought in Greg's Market. But I think that the new Greg's Market will be tied in with the deli and the vegetables and the meat, and that's it. Groceries will be a very small part of our business. We can see that already based on the market and what's going on out there. We're going to do a lot of delivery, I hope, and a lot of online, I hope, where you can order online. This little market we can deliver. But I think,
And the plan has extra parking above what's required by the zoning rules. So we did a calculation of the required spaces and came up with 33, and the proposed parking plan includes 49 spaces. So.
yeah, not 50, 49.
Would
Yep.
it, as long as we're talking about parking, would it be wise to eliminate that parking place that is impacted by the turning of the trucks that you mentioned?
Yeah, we could not show that as a parking space, but I think the reality is it would be used because it's very close to the store. I think the conflict between deliveries that are, I think, what did we present here, between 6 and 8 AM twice a week. The likelihood of a conflict is pretty low, and the reality is that the truck might make some extra turns to make the corner, but they would still be able to make it.
Yeah,
What we show on there is sort of a continuous turning movement that the truck can make, but you could,
the exit onto Exchange Street, I think would be a good idea if it ever happens, but it's actually not part of this application at this
No,
time.
I
Yeah,
know.
okay. I just-
It would come down the line, but I think it could happen.
Will all the deliveries take place at the unloading and loading dock, or are we gonna, are you going to have deliveries, delivery trucks on Exchange Street? You're gonna have,
That'd be rare. That would be pretty rare. I mean, if anything, C&S Grocers used to drop off there for Greg on Exchange Street,
right,
because they would bring in a huge trailer, and they'd be there maybe an hour and gone, but usually before 8 in the morning. But there is the loading dock on the side where the rest of the trucks always came, and C&S could certainly do it on the side as well as Exchange Street if necessary. But I don't think it would be a problem. It wasn't then, I'm not sure it would be now. So.
Other questions from the board members at this time?
I guess only question I have is, and I may have asked this before, the parking and the property on the east side of the existing Gregg building, portion of that is town and a portion of it is yours, right, Tony?
I guess, according to the map here.
Now, has anybody given any consideration or had any talk with the town about the proposed sidewalk that's going down Exchange Street?
Yes, I have,
Yeah?
across the road on the other side.
Okay, so are they gonna actually take land from the property owner, or are they gonna use the existing right-of-way?
I'm not sure, I think they're gonna try to use the existing right-of-way or take the land, I don't know, but see, they're gonna go on the east side of the road up to RK and then cross over and then go on the west side,
yeah, that's my understanding too.
yeah.
So conceivably, like the pre-existing parking there, a portion of that parking was on town property.
It's, if there is, it's not much.
It's way down in the front.
We've got the right-of-way lines from the sidewalk project that you're referring to, Don, and the edges of the striping looks like they are all in, or maybe the very southernmost one might go right to the right-of-way line, but it doesn't really look like they overlap into the right-of-way.
I'm just hoping that we work with the town when we start thinking about sidewalks, that all of a sudden Tony doesn't lose 5 parking spaces because he's actually parked on part of the town right away.
Right. Yeah, I talked to Adam Luigi to get the plans for the sidewalk, and we had that discussion about where the sidewalk was planned, and he told me also that,
This is all hinging on federal grants,
yes.
and you don't know of any hidden requirements that the feds are gonna make on their rights of way and stuff? I'm just laying this out here because you know what?
Right, ask the question.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, there's on those V-Trans projects, there's a right-of-way process.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much the project would stay within the right-of-way, but it's definitely planned for the east side of the road.
Well,
So that may affect the people over there, but not Tony.
I'm just thinking, if we don't have to count those parking spaces, maybe we shouldn't be counting those parking places? That's all I'm saying.
Don't we also have to reduce the number of parking spaces because of the landscaping that we don't yet have before us, that complying with the parking regulations?
Well, the sketch that we were looking at with Jennifer would potentially lose 2 of the angled spaces along the west edge of the parking lot.
Whereabouts would that be?
Midway down. So if you see the meets and bounds description right next to it, right about in line with the N. So, yeah, we have a drawing here. So these 2 spaces.
Regarding the boundary line between Riley and Farnsworth, now, were the trees gonna be removed, okay, and you're proposing anything,
I'm gonna put up a privacy fence,
okay,
somewhere around 10 feet. And then we would use, because there's a lot of junk in between what is now a parking lot and where the trees are. Clean all that out, put in a privacy fence, and all of the residents agreed to that.
that would extend all the way to the end of
It
the,
would come all the way down to where the building is on the corner. And, what's his name? I agreed to put a little turn in for him so he could get his truck in the back of his building. So we'll talk about that.
okay,
Yeah, it's just, this privacy fence is, what the object is to clean that area up. It's pretty bad. I mean, there's broken glass and garbage and junk all in that area, and to get all of it out of there. And there's a lot of utilities underground. We gotta be careful how we do it. And, I got 2 guys that are gonna help me do it, so.
now, when that is paved, will there be a curb on that side?
On that side, there would be a,
Well, a curb on the pavement side,
yeah,
so the water wouldn't drain off,
right,
would drain off in the parking lot.
yeah, well, there's a drain.
Along the west edge of the parking or the
or
east?
He's talking the east side, right
So
here.
that when the pavement is put down, it doesn't sheet off onto the property.
Right, it'll be over, so it'll drain into that, either one of the 2 drain lines that are there.
Okay.
There's two, one is down in front of what's now the dumpster, which picks up the water from the basement. And then the other one is up in the parking lot there.
Up to the northwest corner.
Where does the water from the roof go?
It goes under the bridge.
No, I mean when it leaves the roof.
Yeah, it goes down the driveway and under the bridge. Everything from that area goes under the railroad bridge, down in the hollow.
On the surface.
Yeah, or through that drain that's on the, well, I don't know, it's,
Are there any roof drains?
yeah, no,
Oh, no.
no. And, yeah, runs down the parking lot and into those 2 culverts underneath the bridge.
Mr. Neary, when you were here before, I think there was some discussion of improving the presentation of the east side of the building. I don't see any information on that.
It's pretty
Is
hard
that-
to do anything on the east side. I mean, it's right tight to the road. I mean, changing the building or,
Not changing the wall of the building necessarily, but maybe doing something to it to make it a little more appealing.
or just, well,
I saw somebody power washing it the other day.
Yeah, that, they used the steam cleaner and still couldn't get it. That part of Exchange Street, when a truck gears down and the motors gear down, it blows fuel oil against the building. That's our biggest problem. To put windows in there or make it look whatever, I don't know what I could do. I mean, unless I change the whole decor of the building and put something that could be cleaned continuously. I mean,
Fake windows?
yeah. I don't know if that would mean anything. You know, there was a proposal back about a year ago when someone came to me and said they'd like to do something with the building, put windows across the top. And I said, what for? Well, they said for ventilation. I got thinking about it. I said, whoa, the ventilation would be all from fuel oil, from the diesel engines, from all the trucks. About half, or maybe more than half of the 120 to 140 trucks a day go through that area. They gear down to stop, and of course that blows the exhaust into the building. That's what, the problem was getting that off, and I still haven't succeeded. We've done it twice.
And the exterior lighting, I know there's exterior lighting on the east side.
It is on the west.
It's on the west
Yeah,
side of the
there's-
building.
Yeah, there's four. We're gonna put more there too.
Okay. And what about the front or the south side, where your tables are? Will there be anything?
Well, I think not a lot. I
Well,
mean,
no, I'm just,
I mean, there has to be some to enter and exit, but, you know, it's kind of going to be like a summer thing, unless I close it in. I'm not interested in doing that. So if we use it for tables in the front, it'll be okay. You grab the sandwich at the deli and grab the beer and went out there and had a sandwich and a
so
beer.
our point is whatever additional lighting just has to conform to our regulations.
Other than what's there,
What's that?
other than what's there, if I,
Yes, if you
yeah,
add
if
to
I
it.
add to it, I'll come back.
Well, you don't, no, you don't have to come back for another hearing. You just have to follow the lighting regulations.
oh, yeah. I would do that.
Okay. The other thing is, any proposed lighting for the parking lot?
Eventually, for this back lot,
Yep.
yeah, I'd have to put some lighting in there. And it's not a lot, because we close at 9. We open at 6 in the morning and close at 9 PM. So very unlikely to be any major lighting back here. It'll all be alongside the building, a little in the front and alongside the building, right tight to the building, where your west entrance will be. Actually, you need 2 lights on the north side of that west end, where you come out of the building. There's 3 lights here, and you need 2 there. That would be about it for there. And the others would be downlights, maybe along the fence line, I don't know. They wouldn't be very bright.
So at this point, there's no plan whatsoever to have lighting in the
Not-
parking?
not-
You're not proposing to
Not
put any
lighting
lighting
like the
at all?
parking lot in your supermarkets right now, because this probably won't even be used after 6:30 at night or 7 o'clock at night. I don't know that.
Yeah, this time of year, I mean, it can get dark at 4:30.
Yeah, that's why this area would be important. You know, where the building is on the north side of the building, there's no lighting on that side, where the loading dock is, but there is in the front part.
Okay.
Can you please tell us about the future of the Pool World building? Because when this gentleman was speaking, he said that the plan is ultimately to remove it, but in order to have the spaces that you show, ultimately has to be sooner rather than later in terms of the reopening of the store.
Well, Pool World, I have a location for them, and it's basically up to them. The State of Vermont Historical Society, after looking at it, asked me to tear it down. It's that bad. And I said, okay, so I tell them that. So I don't really know right at this point, but I'm hoping in the next 3 months, that they decide to go another location I have for them. And I mean, that's where I am with them. But I'm not gonna do anything at this time. They've got a great business. I don't wanna discourage them. They're a good tenant, but they know that the chopping block is there because I need the parking.
When does their lease expire?
Well, the lease is month to month, so it could expire next month. You know, it's really, I'm leaving it up to them for now. But, yeah, it's gotta happen pretty quick. I mean, at least by spring.
Do you have a target date, Tony, you'd like to turn the key?
Yeah, yeah. You serious? You wanna know?
Share that with us, or?
Oh, God, is Gail here? She's not here. Oh, yeah, Gail would tell you right now. She's ready to go tomorrow anyway. I've got probably 30 days. I can put it all together. We finally lined up all the refrigeration, all the electrical. So we're, you know, I know there's a 45-day waiting period if you approve this tonight, based on an appeal. But if no one is going to appeal it now, and according to the sheet there, Jonathan, I guess we're cool. We can start. So I mean, anytime, we're that close with the grocery companies. The building and all the shelves have been sanded and painted and cleaned, and refrigeration's ready to go. I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks. All the employees are lined up. There's just a lot of interior things that aren't done that need to be done. Let's say a month. How's that? God willing. In the bank.
So, Mr. Chairman, my understanding, he meets, with this plan here, he would meet all the parking requirements at 37,
That's correct.
to include the handicap. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm not willing at this time to say that we should be counting these parking places on the east side of this building, because I think most of those parking places are within the town right of way. And I'm just not comfortable with creating an additional number so that he meets the plan. I think that those should not be on the table, in my opinion.
Okay.
I also have a question about the Pool World building. If that's not being removed until a certain time in the future, then we can't count those parking spaces
That is also correct.
either. So,
Take away these 5.
Looks like he's got 36 spaces with Pool World still there.
Right.
Less if we listen to what Don's saying. What do you got, 5 spaces? So it'd be 30 without the spaces on Exchange Street.
Not having those spaces on Exchange Street is gonna make it tough, because those are the in-out spaces. People jump out, go in, grab what they want, and leave, heading out from Exchange Street.
And Tony, and my thinking is once the pool world come down and the way you've got your entrance, I personally wouldn't park on the east side of the building, walk all the way around and go in over there on the west side of the
No,
building.
you can go in the front, the door in the front, it's the same door. Nothing's changed
Okay,
there.
so that's gonna be an entrance as well.
As well, yeah, there's two entrances right there. Actually, there's 3 exits, 4 exits altogether, but, yeah, that would remain.
I guess I'm gonna ask the planner, how can you count parking places on land that you don't own?
Well, we don't know that there are any that they don't own. If you look at the property line, it looks like it goes right to the edge.
Do you know what an average parking place is supposed to be?
9 by 20.
It's not 9 feet from from the building to the property line.
What is it?
I'm not an architect, but I can see that that's not 9 feet. If somebody had a scale,
Looks like 9 feet to
probably
me.
could look at it. Looks like about 4.5 feet to me, maybe 5.
I'll leave it to the engineer to defend himself.
Who would walk around with a scale?
The other thing
Probably an engineer.
The other thing I'd point out, Don, is I know that the right-of-way at that point for Exchange Street is quite narrow. It widens out as you get by there, but it's pretty narrow right through there. Actual right-of-way.
Clearly understand that, but I would like to make sure, if Mr. Neary wants to count those parking places, that that would be on his land, not land owned by all of us here. I mean, I think he has enough without counting those, and I don't even think I just think that he should,
Here's it's really hard to tell on this, but this line is the property line.
That's the interior one.
Yep, this orange line here.
Yep.
So if that's 10 feet right there, it might just be 9.
Yeah.
Like 20 lines there for you to see.
So what are the other two lines?
Yeah, looking at my scale, it 9 feet of space between the edge of the building and the edge of the right of way on these two spaces, and then 10.
Can you move your head a little bit to where?
She's using that camera now.
Okay. 9 feet between the edge of the building and the right of way on these two spaces, and 10 as you go further north.
but the first 3 or 4 spaces at that intersection is not 10 feet, and you open up a door right there, someone is going south. I'm just saying I personally don't think we should count those spaces as part of his requirements. I think he has enough without having to add those into the plan. That's just my.
I personally would have a problem with that, because at that point, when the cars get to that stop sign, they're barely moving at that point. At that point, the fact that you took away the ones in the front are enough to make it harder for us to exist besides the ones on the side. And if I have 9 feet from the edge of my building to the edge of the road, I don't think there's a problem with the first 3 spaces, because those vehicles have slowed down to a point where if somebody opened the door, I mean, according to the police records in the town, there has never been a problem along here. There was 2 problems in the front of the building, and then they were both for driving into the building, not for backing out of the building. But everyone here thinks that we should do away with those spaces that I wanted to make 4 or 5 handicap spaces. Now, I will have a problem if you take anything on the east side of that. It could be, it's devastating enough when you take the national average for a parking space close to a building, what it is per dollars per day times a year. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And 4 or 5 spaces in the front is enough, but I can't accept anything on the side if I have the 9 feet. No one has ever had a problem, because the traffic is so slow at that
He
point.
was arguing these spaces.
I'm not arguing that, Tony. I'm just saying, I don't
But
see
you
how
are
this
arguing, but
board,
you are arguing.
this
that point.
board cannot give you something that you don't own.
I'm not asking for that. There's 9 feet between the edge of the building and the road.
I understand, and what is the parking space requirement?
9 feet.
9 feet. I made my point. I'm just saying,
God forbid I should ever do anything to offend the town of Middlebury.
no, Tony, you wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that.
No.
Oh, no.
It is a little unsafe if someone gets out of their car there. I guess they'd have to walk in the road to get around the front of the building,
The
right?
sidewalk on the other side, too. And then you have a tractor trailer go through there, and one coming one way and one the other.
Makes a good loading zone, though.
Pardon me?
Would you feel comfortable with it being a loading zone?
Loading zone is back far enough so it's wide enough back there. I'm just concerned about those first 2 spaces up there towards the front, that's all. That's all.
Other questions this time from the board? At this time, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any comments from the public, questions, concerns?
Kevin, can I or not? Can I?
We had determined that he said, right?
Did we?
I thought we had determined that it should not be part of that,
Yeah, we had agreed that some time ago,
yeah.
that when you're performing your contract as videographer, you're not also taking the headphones off and
Yeah.
participating as a member of the public.
Mhm.
I mean, that was something you had agreed to. I don't want to take your civic
Yeah,
right away from
yeah,
you.
It's just that I shopped there. I shopped there,
Okay.
you know, like many times a week, and I pulled up to those spaces. No problem.
Okay,
problem.
so anything else from the public at this time? Yes.
My name is Amy Ryan. I'm the northern abutter to
Mhm.
Greg's Meat Market.
Yep.
Even though I think it still says Amy Riley, but it's been a few years. I have also shopped at Greg's Market for many, many years and parked on the east side of that, along the building. In fact, because I knew Greg well enough, I would walk in the back door at his office and then go through the store, and I never had any problems with cars coming by too fast with my door open or being able to slide in and slide out with traffic. The only problem I ever had was when people were heading northbound on Exchange Street and they'd pull in to that space facing north, which is a parking violation anyway, but I never had any problem if people were parked appropriately alongside that building. Just to speak to the comment about the east side of the building being improved aesthetically, you know, I think Exchange Street from that point north is about the only industrial zone we have in Middlebury, and I think the building fits the aesthetic of the neighborhood in general. There happen to be 4 or 5 residences across and just to the north, but you know, when I bought my building, it was a meat market and it looked that way, and I think everybody in the neighborhood is the same way. I don't necessarily think that improving the building to make it look more homey or Vermont vernacular is necessary for that side of the building. I think it is what it is. It's a grocery store, it's a storage building, whatever it is or is going to be. To me, the sort of straightness of the building allows for easier maintenance, cleaning, and as Tony pointed out, if there's any breaks in the barrier of that building, it could compromise the integrity of the air inside the building, which of course we wouldn't want that for our food or our consumers. And I would just encourage the DRB, you know, anecdotally, I've been around this town for almost 20 years, shopped at Greg's Meat Market every single day until it closed its doors. You know, I live south of here in Salisbury, but you know, over time have missed having a grocery store there, and I think the added parking and the removal of the pool world building, I think the DRB has an opportunity to promote business growth here in Middlebury, and I think Tony's plan and his willingness to stick his neck out to do what he wants to do here, which is to replace an iconic building or replace, you know, an iconic business in this town, is commendable. And I would encourage the DRB not to impose any insurmountable restrictions on Tony and allow him to move forward with his plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Staff, any additional questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just, I guess I would just recommend that if you do choose to go into deliberative session, you might in this case want to leave the hearing open. And then when you reemerge from deliberative session, you could close the hearing at that time. And I say that because I don't know if you'll want to give yourselves the option of discussing a DAC review. That wouldn't be an option available to you if you close the hearing before you went into deliberation.
Are there any other questions of the applicants right now? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve, disapprove, or move to executive session or deliberative session?
I move that we discuss this matter in deliberative session.
Is there a second to the motion? Moved and seconded. Is there questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we will be going into deliberative session after we have our next hearing. Thank you very much.
They're willing to stay. Right,
Yes, we're willing to stay, but we will, when we deliberate, the room will be closed and then we'll open it back up. We just have no idea on how long that will be, so.
Okay.
You can always call us. You can always call us in the morning, Donna, if you want to know how it went.
Yeah.
Okay.
David today. Where's David today?
Are they working? Oh, you do, you don't really know.
Laying on the floor. Figured somebody had a big.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an application request by Aurora Learning Center for amended conditional use approval pursuant to section 540 and 610 to add the Middlebury Area Land Trust malt business offices to the property and expand educational opportunities for pre-K through 6th grade program. No changes are requested to the building footprint or site plan. The property is located at 238 Peterson Terrace, the high-density residential district, parcel number 005107. Okay, I'll administer the oath now. Do you affirm that the evidence and information you are giving in this proceeding is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief? If you could raise your hand, and anybody that may want to participate in the audience, raise your hand also.
Your name is,
What's your name?
your name, please?
Carolyn Ramsay, Ramsayer.
Okay, at this time, I would ask the members of the board if any member has a conflict of interest regarding this application. Hearing none. At this time, does any member wish to disclose any ex parte conversations concerning this case? Hearing none. Okay, if you just introduce yourselves and then
Okay.
tell us about your proposal.
My name is Jamie Montague, and I'm the director at the Middlebury Area Land Trust. And with me,
Is Katie McMurray, and I'm the director at the Aurora Learning Center, Aurora Preschool.
so I think my plan is to just run through the proposal. It's not as spatially technical as the one that you just saw. This is more conceptual. So the history of the space is that from 2002 to 2017, it was used as a K-8 school, place-based education primary school. And MALT, the Middlebury Area Land Trust, we've hosted our offices in Marble Works since 2007. And the work that we've been doing has been growing to reach more into the realm of environmental education on the lands that we've conserved. So we have been considering different spaces that we could possibly use to not only host those education programs, but also to centralize all of our operations for trails and land maintenance. Right now, our office space in Marble Works is just an office space, and then our trail equipment is kind of all over Addison County. So we're hoping to bring all the elements of our work into one space. So MALT approached Aurora when they transitioned last year to hosting a nature-based preschool. And Katie and I connected a lot on our values and mission of the two organizations, which is very much place-based education, a space where people in the community can come together to access naturalist education, ecology, programming, and like I said, also looking for a space where we can also host our lands and recreation work. So that's just a little bit of background as to why we're interested in collaborating in the space and the need that Malt has. So in going through the application process, I looked through each of these criteria that you all consider, and it was very clear that there aren't really any proposed changes to the actual space or structures that are already there. The piece that was missing is that because it's a high-density residential area, office use is not an approved use in that building. And in working with Jen and David, they explained to me that because of Malt's nonprofit status, we are an office. And so that was why I came here. And, in working with Katie on this application, some of the major opportunities that we've identified in this space is that when it was used as a K-8 school, there was an opportunity for year-round education, a space where there was both school-time education, after-school programming, vacation weeks, the February and April vacation week programming, and also summer camps. And right now, with the preschool that exists there, they're focusing their core efforts on the core school days and hours of the year. And so we see the type of programming that Malt is doing as a really good complementary fit to what the preschool does. There's that table that I attached in our application. It is basically a table that compares the previous use of the Aurora School prior to 2018 with what we would be proposing to do in the space now. So it talks about the first two rows in that table. They talk about how the school would operate under our proposed model during the school year, and then how that would look during the summer months. And what you'll see when we work out all of the hours and the numbers, that we're actually in a collaborative effort, still slightly under what the approved use is for the space, which is 30 students is what got approved in 2002. So we're looking at more in the realm of 25 at any given time. You'll also see that during the school year, we're actually well below that in our proposal, with the 16 preschoolers being there during the core academic hours, and then Malt hosting after-school programming in the after-school hours with an additional 16 kids. So basically this chart outlines how the use that we're proposing in terms of the education space is falling well within the already approved uses in terms of people and parking spaces and number of students and hours. One of the things that Jen and Dave brought to our attention was the importance of addressing how this may impact the area, the neighborhood broadly. And so I wanted to outline how this proposal is actually not doing anything above and beyond what was already there when it existed from 2002 to 2017 as a K-8 school. So some of the other points I wanted to make is that, I moved through the technical pieces of this application and I didn't really come across many, there's no red flags, and like I said, we are not proposing any structural changes. I think signage was the only thing where I actually stated something we'd be doing, which would be putting up Malt's sign. But what was really interesting is when I moved through the how it aligns with the goals of the Middlebury Town Plan. It was very striking to me how many opportunities there were to point out how this proposed collaboration meets many of the goals of the town plan. And I understand that the town plan is a visionary document as opposed to a planning and governance document. But I do want to point out that I think there are many opportunities that will be provided to the greater Middlebury area by having a space where Malt can effectively manage and maintain our trails, and also the synergy that will be created between our two organizations who are looking to do very place-based environmental education in a space that is so well situated, nestled between two town forests that's Means Woods and Chipman Hill. And then also something that's a caveat to this application, which Katie may want to elaborate on this, but in the original, what's that called? The decision in 2002 when the space was approved to be a school, Jen and I discovered that the language allowed for K through 8 education. And so we, as part of this, sort of on the side, wanted to bring to your attention that we would like that to encompass preschool through 8th grade. The official decision doesn't list preschool as one of the age groups. And we think that that's important for several reasons. It's also in the town plan outlined in several areas how important it is for us to provide high-quality early education programs in Middlebury, and that's already a challenge for families to access. And so by allowing the preschool age to be in the space, it's provided much-needed high-quality education opportunities for the early learners. And I think some of the other things I pointed out from our town plan was that the idea of utilizing this space for a full calendar educational experience. The K-8 Aurora School that was there from 2002 to 2017 offered that year-round education opportunities, and this partnership would really allow us to cultivate those opportunities, which are much needed and supported by the community. So I think, would you like to add anything general?
No,
That's sort of a broad overview of
Yep,
where
no, that's great.
Thank you.
we're coming from.
So you're gonna become a tenant at the Aurora School?
That would be the plan if we got approved, yes. We would be a renter of the space from the Aurora Learning Center. I should also say that Susan Veen is the owner of the parcel, and she sent a letter saying that Katie and I could represent her because she no longer lives in Middlebury, she lives in New Hampshire. I should have said that right off the bat, but that's why we're both here, and Susan, the owner of the property, is not.
There's a lot of good things while you're moving there, but probably a good concession on a rent is probably the most important thing.
Actually, no. What we've talked about in our
Yeah, it's-
initial conversations, that would be pretty comparable to what we actually have a closet in Marble Works. Malt has a really, really small office with no amenities, so this would be an improvement for Malt.
When the school was operating, did you operate similar to the public school calendar, or was it all year round?
It was similar to the public school calendar, and they offered camps during vacations and summers.
And after-school care
And
in the
after-school care.
post 3 o'clock, 3 to 5:30 hours, they were
Right.
offering after-school care, which is sort of the intended gap that Malt would help to fill in our education programming.
Thank you.
Separate from the educational aspect of Malt, you mentioned the maintenance of the.
Sure.
Does that entail
That's a great question.
from your office?
Yeah, so one of the things that I pointed out in the application, and I think is worth remembering, is that maintaining trails and lands takes all kinds of equipment and resources and time and space. And we would continue to house our larger equipment, like we have a few mowers and tractors and things like that. Those would continue to be housed at some of our partner farms in the countryside that are closer to the outskirts of the TAM. But things like chainsaws and signage posts and fuel for cleaning out the chainsaws and hand tools like clippers and hand saws, all of those would fit really well into the outdoor storage spaces that Aurora has, and they're all locking spaces. So one of my first flags was like, what about preschoolers and chainsaws? And we've thought through that really carefully. The preschool does not have as many pieces of equipment or materials that go along with what they're doing as the K-8 school did, so it's actually freed up some storage space. They have 2 outdoor storage spaces and an attic storage space, and so we've talked about collaborating and sharing those spaces. They're pretty vacant right now. And we feel like they're safe and definitely
locked.
contained and locked and all of that.
Okay, well, now, for instance, the chainsaws, would the
Sure.
maintenance and cleaning of that, would that take place?
That's a great question. So there's also an outdoor, what would you call it, carport area. And so we've talked about that would be a covered space where a staff person could do that. The reality is that most of that type of stuff happens in the field, on the trails, and on the lands. And so we felt like that was a question we had to answer ourselves. How would you see those two things having synergy in the same space? And I think that Katie and I, as well as the board at the Aurora Learning Center and Susan, who was the founder of the Learning Center, we feel like we've really covered those bases.
Safety-wise,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Isn't most of your trail maintenance done by volunteers on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question. So historically, it has been done that way. We're in a time of transitioning. Some of you are probably familiar with John Derrick, who has built most of the trail system that Malt maintains. And John is now in his 70s, and he's making an active effort to step away from the trails. And so Malt is working towards using programs like the AmeriCorps program and internships, and eventually connecting the trails with our land stewardship into one staff role. And that's reflected in the staffing that's listed in that spreadsheet for you, our projected staffing. Yeah, so there is a volunteer element of what we do. The reality of ours, if we were something like a science center or a museum, many volunteers would be coming to us in that space, but because so much of our work happens out on the lands, volunteers actually very rarely come to the office. I can attest to that because I'm in the office mostly myself, usually alone, and all of the action is happening out in the field.
That's fine.
Is that why you were asking that about what would
I
the
happen to
flow
live
be?
at one section of the Malt Trail where I see a lot of people on a daily basis making sure the trail is open
Yeah.
and clear.
Yeah, yep.
And with their clippers and their little
Yeah.
hand saws and
Yep.
what have you, so.
Yeah, and some of those people may be interns that we host, some of them may be resident volunteers. Yeah.
Where do those people currently collect their equipment?
It's stored at different farms around Addison County.
So what sort of schedule do you anticipate the maintenance people, whether it's AmeriCorps or volunteers in the
Sure.
interim, will maintain?
So in general, trail and lands maintenance happens mostly in the May to September timeframe. That's because that's when the growing season is. And usually the way that our work is accomplished is that the person, whether it's John, who's been a volunteer, but eventually that may be a staff person or an intern, that person, communicates and coordinates with volunteers, and they choose a location where they're going to meet, and the equipment that's used, which is things like hand saws and clippers most of the time. Grass whips. Anybody ever used a grass whip before? It's very gratifying. They meet them at the location. So say that would be like at the Jackson Trailhead, or that might be, at the golf course at the college or in Battelle Woods. So it's not that volunteers come to our hub to gather those supplies and materials and then go out to the trails. It's rather that we bring it to them. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the current relationship between educational opportunities in that space and Malt?
That's a great question. So we've tried piloting some of this to just the actual program, the youth programs themselves, just to see, one, how they would fill, two, how collaborating. So for example, I'm teaching a once a week after school program from 3 to 5:30. And so we wanted to see, how does that look with the preschool and with Malt, and it helped us to flesh through some of the questions in this application. The program filled with a waiting list in 24 hours. I'm not exaggerating. And it's been really successful because of the nature of our education, which is outdoor. It's not indoor. We actually haven't used the indoor space once since the beginning of this current school year. So we arrive with the kids after school. We spend all of our time in Chipman Hill and in Means Woods. Sometimes we venture as far as Battelle Woods. So does that also help answer your question? Do you want to say anything about how that's been working? The pilot?
No, just that, it seems very, that Malt is very outdoors, so sometimes we see them through our windows. It's always very exciting. And that's about
Yeah.
it.
I think, and I also think that, I'm not sure how much this affects your decision, but what Katie is working to create in that space is a place-based, nature-based preschool program. And my background comes from environmental education, and now I'm the director at the Land Trust, and we're really trying to create this full circle mission that is conserving lands and then connecting people to them through recreation and education. And that's not just pre-K, it's all the way through adulthood. And we feel like the direction that our organizations are going is very synergistic, and that this space is not currently used to its full capacity and benefit to the community, and we really see this as a way to do that. And we're both quite passionate about it.
Yeah, and the response from families, community, anyone I've spoken with is more of this collaboration and partnership.
So I would only ask, and I'm reading the staff comments on page 3. I tried to look and see what I could see for spaces there tonight on my way in. I don't see how that configuration works, but if you tell me it does, I'm okay with that, but it's,
You mean parking spaces?
yeah,
What you're seeing there is what the folks presented to us.
yeah.
We don't, it doesn't have any measurements. I mean, I went over there too, and I agree with you.
It's kind of, yeah.
The,
Nothing's defined, there's no, I mean, there seems to be no organization to the parking lot. That's
Sure.
one
The,
of my
the
concerns.
spaces, this model that was drawn was based on what was approved in 2002. And that was one of the main concerns when it was being transitioned from a community home to the school, was the parking access. And so in looking at the historical application from 2002, which I think I have a copy of it, that's where that came from. And you're correct, there are no measurements on that sheet. I did not create that myself. Let's see here if I can find, I don't know, Jen, do you possibly, oh, here it is, notice of decision. I think there was a parking map in here. So would it be helpful to show this? Is that, or would that not be helpful? It's okay if it's not, I'm just offering.
Would they all have a copy of the map from your application?
No, this is from the hearing in 2002, where the Development Review Board had brought parking to light and then outlined what it needed to look like in order for it to have the approval to be a school, and that was met in 2002, and it has not been altered since. So.
Are there
that
dimensions on there? Are there
There
measurements?
are on this one, but this is the one from 2002.
Right.
That's from that hearing packet. And it does not show where they've since been expanded to, because this was a map of, and that decision saying, these are the areas that need to be expanded to have accommodating parking. And that was
Okay.
done in 2002, and it hasn't been
If you'd like to
altered.
submit that might be helpful for us.
Sure, okay.
And tell me how the bus works for you there. 'Cause
Bus is right now, we're having a board meeting within, I think, next week. And we're voting on whether or not to keep that bus. I don't know. I think that probably that bus will be sold.
So that means there's gonna be more individual cars coming to school instead of the bus?
No, the bus is not used for transportation other than field trips for children. So that has never been used as a
Never been
to or
used
fro.
as a-
No.
okay.
And so I actually think that the bus in this, may or may not be true. If the bus goes away, that actually opens up more parking spots, because the bus sort of is housed in a spot that,
What is the
Not
net
there.
increase of full-time people at the center now, if Malt were to move?
That's a great question. So that table again that I put in my application, it shows the configuration looks different, but the actual full-time equivalent staffing is exactly the same pre this proposal and this proposal. So when the Aurora School was functioning as a K-8 school, they had 6 staff. There were 4 full-time and 2 part-time. And the preschool operates with 1 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff. Malt has 1 full-time staff, 3 part-time staff, and we're proposing to share an administrative position that would be part-time. So when you add up the pieces, it's same equivalence. And one thing on the transportation piece I wanted to add before we switch topics is that the actor bus goes right by there, so that's a important element of transportation. So
But
for
there's no
example,
place for an actor bus to turn around there.
they just pull
They
right up
just
and then we
stop.
get off at the,
Right,
yeah.
they would let you out on,
They stop right at our driveway.
They stop right at the
So you
driveway.
get on at the bottom of the driveway and off at the bottom of the driveway.
so they come in Peterson Heights and they drop you off and then leave out of Peterson Heights?
So there's the first entrance to Peterson Terrace, which is almost directly across the street
Right.
from the cooperative insurance. The bus route goes up that entrance, snakes around,
Right.
stops at the bus stop at the Aurora School and the, what's that development called?
Actually, on Peterson
Southland.
Heights, it drops you off.
Peterson Terrace, and then they continue down and out the second entrance by the Champlain Valley apiaries.
And they pick up the same?
Yes, they do. And so one example of that being advantageous is that in the program, the pilot program that we've started for the after-school program, I actually meet the students at Mary Hogan and we take the Actor public transportation bus to Aurora. They drop us off at Aurora. So it's just one more element of this being a great use of the
And the
space.
other element is employees use that bus and don't drive cars.
That's true.
This is probably a very difficult question, but
Sure.
if the office were moved there, would the amount of time that you spend change to more in the educational aspect than the business aspect, or would it remain this?
Do you mean me personally or Malt as an organization?
Well, I guess the organization, but primarily.
Sure.
You're the one that's there most of the time.
Yeah, so actually the answer to that is the opposite of what you would think it would be. As the director, I've been extending myself into the environmental education realm in an effort to show and demonstrate to the Malt board that there is a need for this, and it's been a resounding, obviously clear answer. We had over 100 students on our summer camp waiting list. I told you that the after-school pilot program filled in 24 hours. So I've been trying to teach more to demonstrate that there is a need for this in the community. And my intention is that either through this avenue or through hosting the programming on other Malt conserved lands and not having a sheltered space to use, that I will spend less time teaching and actually would like to incorporate elements of AmeriCorps and internships. It's a model in my previous job for Audubon, Vermont that we used, and it worked really well. So the answer to your question is that I actually see myself as a director spending less time actually teaching than I am right now because I'm trying to help get the ball rolling, chicken and egg.
Thank you. Other questions from the board at this time? Staff, anything?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that, so, I don't think anyone questions the importance of your, I know no one questions the importance of your mission, like, at all.
Thank you, Jen.
The argument to be made here is not, oh, it's like the same amount of impact, or the mission is important. The argument to be made is, the mall office is not to be classified as a business professional office.
Correct.
Rather, the mall office is to be classified as an extension of this school use. So when Kevin's asking that question, he's asking like, what is the small office gonna do that doesn't have to do with Katie and all the great educational stuff, which we need to be thinking about, that might make it fall
Sure.
back off into the classification of business professional office that isn't
Sure.
allowed in that district?
Sure.
We're just trying to write a decision here that would be legally sound.
Sure.
And that's a real sticking point.
Do you think that you could frame that in a question? I do understand your logic, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to.
I was absolutely getting there, I just had to breathe for a second.
Sure.
So like, knowing all of that, like, can you talk to us a little bit more about what you'd be doing from the mall office that
Yes.
is not environmentally educated, environmental education oriented?
Absolutely.
Like the annual meeting and stuff like that?
Yes, absolutely. So there are elements of our organization that are outside of the environmental education realm. Those include once monthly board meetings. Those include, for example, we hosted our annual meeting at the Aurora Learning Center this year as, again, a test way to feel how the space could be used by us, also as an opportunity to share with some of the people who are supporting this idea what that space looks like. And then the other pieces of our work are conservation and recreation. So I explained that the people who are taking care of our lands and trails, their work is primarily outdoor focused. Probably 80% of their time is spent outdoors. The other part is an office setting, either writing up stewardship monitoring reports on the computer, or calling and coordinating with volunteers who are helping in the trail work. And then my role as the director of the main full-time staff, I'm doing everything from online fundraising to going and meeting with different landowners around the county about options for conserving their lands. That type of stuff tends to happen at people's homes. And then, the occasional, I'm trying to think, somebody coming in who has an idea about this or that parcel, wants to stop by and talk my ear off about how they think this trail should be built on Creek Road or something like that. So there's an element of public access that happens because it's an office of a nonprofit, and that would include pretty low-key one-on-one conversations usually. Does that help? Do you have other things? I'm trying to do my best to paint a picture of what it looks like.
How big is your board?
We had the capacity for 11 seats, and we currently are sitting 8. Yeah, with hopes to have 11.
So how does the parking look when you have your board meetings or I saw how it worked with the annual meeting. Maybe you want to describe it to these guys.
So we have also parking access that in 2 locations. One is down Peterson Terrace on the Chipman Hill side. There's an agreement with the cooperative insurance companies who owns that Chipman Hill access point of the TAM. Do you all know where I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't say that that's zoned for any number of parking spaces, but during our annual meeting, we had the public park there and then walk up the road to the Aurora Learning Center to reduce congestion.
Weather permitting.
Actually, it was raining that night, so we had...
You're not going to get there in the wintertime.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Because they don't plow it.
And and the other one is that the Champlain Valley Apiaries, Chaz, who is the owner of that business, we're very close with him, and he's a supporter of malt, and so he also has offered, for example, at the annual meeting, he said, if you have overflow and you need more spaces, you can park them here at the Champlain Valley Apiaries. So we were being really creative.
I was very impressed. You had flagmen, they had solar lights all along Peterson Terrace, but there is no sidewalk there, right?
There's a crossing. There is a crosswalk that goes from the TAM side to Peterson Terrace, but there is no, and there's also no street lighting. I actually live in that neighborhood myself and would love to advocate for a street light on that backside. It's pretty dark.
Other questions from the board? Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? If you would tell us your name.
My name's Carol Ramsayer, and I'm a Middlebury resident. I'm also a board member of Otter Creek Audubon. And that's why I came tonight, because we do some things with malt, and we kind of share a value of providing outdoor experiences for the Middlebury public. And so I wanted to extend my support for this.
Thank you.
I'm also the education chairman for Otter Creek Audubon. So I've done quite a few joint things with malt. Over the years, I've collaborated, myself and as well as other volunteers from Otter Creek Audubon, collaborated with malt to offer yearly hikes for beginning birders at the Wright Park area of the TAM. We do that every year. We also offer monthly wildlife surveys in Otterview Park that are open to the public. And so these are some joint things that we do on a regular basis with malt. We have plans to continue this collaboration, joining forces with our volunteers and using our joint education material resources. And this collaboration allows our groups to bring even more nature-based programs to the Middlebury public. The fact is that the Aurora Learning Center, the fact that it's located so near to the TAM, this is just great. It makes for many opportunities for discoveries for the children and adults. So I just wanted to express my support.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
My name is Bridget Goslin. I am a parent whose child attends the Aurora Learning Center. I'm also a resident of Middlebury. I actually live on Washington Street Extension, and so my daughter and I utilize the TAM trails pretty frequently. I also hold a degree in Human Development and Family Studies, so I've studied a lot about child development, and I was really excited and felt really blessed that Katie's program was so involved with the surrounding nature. And one of my favorite activities that the children have done this year is they have, well, actually, Malt has created a stage play space in Mead Forest, and Katie's class, they venture out and they perform plays in the forest. And my daughter, she's 4.5, and she has really developed more of a love for nature based on this collaboration in this program. And so I wanted to say, as a parent and also as a community member, I do strongly support their initiative.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kelly Lamb, and I live in Weybridge, and I am a member of the Aurora Learning Center board. And I just wanted to note that the board does support this effort to collaborate very much, and would be happy to have it happen. And personally, my children have spent a lot of time with Katie and her programs, which are very awesome, nature-based programs, and they also have learned so much. And I can't imagine, between the brain trust between these two, what is in store for the towns of Middlebury and Weybridge and Cornwall and so on. The opportunities are amazing, so I just wanted to extend my support as well.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Am I allowed to comment?
Sure. By all means.
So one thing that Carol brought up that I wanted to make clear is that us collaborating in that space doesn't mean that every type of nature-based programming we do will happen from that space. There are programs that happen in Otterview Park, and we have summer camps in Otter Creek Gorge, and we have birding programming in Wright Park. One of the challenges that we face now is there is such a disconnect in Malt's office space from the outdoors, access to materials, and collaborative space. So I just want to make clear that what we envision in bringing more access to this community doesn't mean that all of it will happen from Aurora Learning Center. It just means that a space to store education supplies, which include Rubbermaid bins of all kinds of skulls and antlers and dead animals. Those are things that we don't have access to right now. We can't store those things in our current space. So when Carol was talking about the collaborative nature of what we're proposing, I didn't want you to be picturing it all happening from that space. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that, again, I know that the town plan is a visioning document, but as a resident myself, in reading it, I just felt very compelled by how it calls for creative solutions to meet the needs of the community. And if I could come up with a creative solution that checks so many boxes, this is definitely one of them. And we want to do everything in our best effort to meet your concerns as the Planning Commission, the Development Review Board, on a regulatory level. So,
One last question.
Sure.
How long is your lease for?
We haven't, at Marbleworks currently, or here?
No.
So that's something that we would venture into discussing if we had the approval for moving into the space. Yes. But as an organization and keeping our health in
And
mind,
over the years,
we'd probably look for something like a 10-year lease so that we.
And over the years, we've seen small schools come and go and move, and I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's
Yeah.
not a secure facility for you, but.
That was one of the questions that came up at our board meeting at the Land Trust. And
Okay.
I think that, again, the security of the Aurora Learning Center and what they're doing in their nature-based preschool would also be strengthened by a partnership with Malt, as would Malt benefit from access to the space. So I think we're both benefiting immensely, and Kelly may be able to speak to that because she's a member of their board. But I think there's a lot to be gained for both of our organizations.
Can you address how you envision the future of Malt as an operation in areas separate from its educational programming, if there are, and maintenance, if there are any?
I don't think I quite understand your question. Could you ask again?
Well, what you've described to us as Malt's operations are maintaining trails and
Lands.
land, offering educational experiences and
Yep.
collaborations with different organizations,
Mm.
and advice to the general public on what they should be doing with their land, and the ever important fundraising. I'm just curious as to if Malt has a long-term plan, what do you envision in terms of growth? Is it all in
see.
the educational area?
I see.
Is it more, I don't know, I guess you could
Sure.
always have more maintenance on the trails.
Sure.
But
Okay, so I think I can answer your question. I think that there is a carrying capacity in this community for the amount of programming and conserved lands and trails that we can hold. And I think that in terms of trails, there's, it's important to remember that Malt is not, although we are the Middlebury Area Land Trust, we are an Addison County focused organization. So I think in the education realm, there's a carrying capacity, and I feel in my experience and expertise as an educator in many different environmental education organizations across the country, what we have proposed is going to meet the capacity that this community has to fill that type of programming. So in other words, I don't think there's going to be a day where we're going to have 300 children in our summer camps.